Good morning. My name is Betty Jo Ritchey. I was born September the 15th, 1938 in Lubbock, Texas, in Lubbock County. My parents were Joe and Juanita Fondy. My mother was Juanita Skeen. There were 7 children in her family, and her mom and dad was Matt and Catherine Skeen. I have a picture up there on the wall of them on their wedding day, and they were really, well, I never knew Matt. I only knew Catherine, and Catherine would come to her house. She lived in Lubbock, Texas, and she'd come to her house sometimes when her her daughter, would leave to go traipsing around the country, and she'd leave her with us, and I always got to sleep with her, but I helped her a lot. She liked me, and I always was very kind to older people, and so she slept with me when she was left. She was a real sweet lady. Of course, she was a little older then, and my grandmother, Catherine, they had to live in a cellar. They built a house, had a house built, and when the house was being built, they lived in a cellar, if you can feature that. But I have a picture of the house somewhere in one of my scrapbooks, and it was a very nice house. And Mom, she liked to go dancing. Of course, back then, dancing was probably a sin. If you were a respectable person, you didn't go dancing. But anyway, she and her brother, she had a brother, his name was Leroy, and she loved to ride horses and dress up like a cowgirl, but she was a real cowgirl. But her and her brother always rode on the range, and they had Hereford cattle. One of the pictures I painted up here on the wall is a picture of a Hereford cow, and it has their insignia on the back of the cow. I know y'all probably can't see it, but it's in there. He had died before. Anyway, they're from this country, the United States of America. But they were they came from Somerset, Texas, and they're buried there. My mother is buried there with her parents. But we went to Silverton. I went to almost every place that had some history. And we went to the place that they lived in, but the house was not standing. Now this was really important. Their barn was still standing at that time. I don't remember the year. It was, I don't remember, but the barn was still standing. It was a big barn, and I'm sure they had hay stored in there, different things. But I think it's all gone now. I think the winds have destroyed the barn. But they had a big house, and then the house that they lived in, the first house, the house that they built, that was gone, and a big brick home was built in place of I guess the house. I don't know what happened to the house, but somebody built a brick house, and we did visit the people that lived there. The Montagues, I remember their name. Montagues was their last name, and we went through the cemetery, and the Skeens were all buried in one plot, and various other people that we knew. She had a cousin named Black, and they were buried in there. And I didn't know too much history on their friends and neighbors, but a little bit. I do know this, after they built the first house that I was talking about, their nice house, after the cellar, then they built the house. They had a lot of fruit trees around their place. And Mother always, she loved to put up jelly and things. She put up every kind of jelly you could think of. And I guess that's where I got my jelly making. When I put up plum, we went out and picked plums, and I put strawberry jelly up. I put up grapes from our place out here. Mostly I put up things that were that had been gathered off the tree, my trees. So we had a lot of fruit trees here too. Oh, peaches, I put up peach preserves, plums, grapes, and I even put up that mesquite bean. His mother was a twin. She had a twin brother, and I can't even remember their name right now, my grandparents, but I never knew them. I wasn't born at that time. That's my great-grandfather on my dad's side, and he was on the Union side. He was not Confederate at all. They were living up in Illinois, in that part of the country. So he went in with the Union soldier, and he died at 25 years of age. He married Phoebe Ann Humphreys. I have a picture of her, and she remarried later, but he was, out of that one child, I've got a picture of them, him and his wife. They had the 12 boys and one girl. So I have a picture of everybody. So that goes back, see, that's my grandparents, and then my he's my great-grandfather, first grade. He was named Joe Bailey Fondy. I don't know. I know there's a record out. He used to play this record all the time. Joe Bailey, won't you come home? But I don't know who named him Joe Bailey. I mean, I don't know where the name came from, but that was his name. And he was, his mom and dad, I never knew either one of them. Those were grandparents I did not know. When I was born, they were already gone. And out of that family, there was 12 boys born and one girl. Can you imagine having 12 boys and one girl? Now their sister, she lived in Snyder, Texas, and we lived in Slayton, Texas, and we would go see her quite often. And she was the best cook in the world. She'd always have 2 or 3 pies and just everything. And I think that was one of the reasons I loved to go there, because we had plenty to eat. She was one of the sweetest people that you'd ever meet in your life. Just very sweet. And she had 2 girls and 1 boy. One boy got killed. Young people were dancing on. They lived near a bridge, and they were up there dancing on the bridge and he got killed. And then the 2 daughters, of course, they had Elsie and Dorothy were the names of the girls, and I think the boy's name was Alton or something. A car hit him. They were dancing on the bridge, and I guess I don't know all the details. All I know is he got killed on the bridge by a car. And then she just had the 2 girls, but you would know that she went through anything, because every time we went to visit her, she was just the most pleasant person to be around. I could almost tell you all my uncles and aunts, most of them were railroaders. I think there was 6 that were railroaders. There's my dad, Joe Bailey, Claude Fondy, Joe Bailey Fondy, Claude Fondy, Dan Fondy, he lived in Roswell. Claude lived in El Paso. Henry Fondy, he lived in Slayton. One boy, I can't recall his name, he got killed. I'm not sure how the accident, I know I'd have to refer back to my brother's book. Fred Fondy was the youngest, and we visited them quite often. Dan's family we visited. Fred lived in Roswell, New Mexico. There was Uncle D. He lived in California. And he had a famous boy that was playing ball. He played for the Chicago Cubs, and everybody that knew baseball pretty well, they knew him. He had a card. I've still got a card here about because it was a professional ball player. And then he went, after he went from the Chicago Cubs, he went to the Milwaukee Brewers. And I guess that was the only 2 teams that he played for. And one time he came to visit us, and I was so happy to see him because everybody loved baseball at that time. That one that was the clown, that was Uncle Homer. And Floyd Fondy, he lived in Raton, New Mexico. And I think I'm doing pretty good for 12. The reason I don't remember some of them as well, because we didn't visit them that often, but I remember the ones we visited quite often. Or they usually came to our house, because my mother was an excellent cook. She was like Aunt Gertrude. My mother was one of the best cooks you'll ever hear about. Anyway, I can't remember the other one, but I'm sure it'll come to me sooner or later. But anyway, 12 brothers, I just can't imagine having 12 boys growing up and all the mischief that they get into. My dad told me a few stories, but we won't get into that because some of those stories, I'm sure, I don't know if they're true or not, but anyway, that's another chapter. Later, Mother met my dad, and he was 15 years older than my mother. And he had been married before. He married a lady out in, her name was Irene. I can't remember her last name, but Irene was her first name. And they had one boy. And during my lifetime, I said, I'm going to meet my half-brother. It was the last thing I'd do. Well, I did. One time me and my husband went out to Reno, Nevada. That's where he was. And I met him, and he was the nicest person. And he looked just like my dad. And he looked just identical to my dad. But I met him and his wife, and they had a boy at that time, one boy. So I got to know him and a little bit and corresponded with them for a while. But it was just so ironic because I wanted to meet my half-brother and see what it was like. And it was like almost meeting my dad, you know. First that I can kind of remember was we moved from Lubbock to Slayton, Texas. It was about 15 miles from Lubbock. It was a 2-story house. And my dad, he was a bootmaker, a very good bootmaker. He had orders from all over the country, and he even made me and my sister a pair of boots. My sister did a little bit of, there was 5 of us in the family, 5 children, and I was the middle child, and my older sister, 2 years older than I, she did some barrel racing, and my dad made her a beautiful pair of boots. They were tan and black with her name Carol, and it scrolled at the top. And my boots were gray and maroon, and my name was scrolled at the top. He was so good at making boots, but he did that as long as he could until his hands, he had arthritis in his hands, so we had to go into another business after the boot making. And my mother was in leather work. She did beautiful leather work, and she tried to teach me the leather business. And she had a good business, and she had a sign out in her front yard, Juanita Fondy's Leather Craft. And she had all kinds of orders and was busy. So that put me and my sister, we always cooked in the kitchen and prepared the meals because she was busy doing the leather work. So we had to learn very quickly and very fast that we had to take care of the house mostly. And we had a lot of sandstorms up in West Texas where I live. And when one of those bad sandstorms came, we had to take everything out of the kitchen cabinets and clean them, and it was a mess. And there was sand all over the floor of the house, and we just did a thorough cleaning. I remember having a bad accident. I was up on the tin barn, and everybody was sliding off the tin barn, and I thought this was really not a very good idea, but you know, when you're children, you think you could do anything and nothing will ever happen to you. Well, I slid off of the tin bar and I ripped my inside of my leg, and I still had the scar from that. It was a real bad accident. But as far as having a lot of accidents, I really didn't. I mean, all the silly things that we did, you'd think that would have a lot of broken bones. But luckily, I didn't have any broken bones, and I still don't. I'll knock on hard wood. But anyway, that was one of my worst accidents, and you usually have the scars to remember them. And we had a dairy. We had 7 cows, and my mom and dad always got up early and milked the cows. And me and my sister, we had to strain the milk, put it in a strainer, and bottle it, and then we had to deliver it later in the day. And sometimes when we were in school, we delivered it before we went to school. And then the 2-story house, I remember, was so big, and we had a staircase. And I always remember sliding down the banister. And I'm surprised all the things we did as children. We didn't get killed or something. We used to play Superman, and we got up on the roof of our little garage, and we'd jump off. And I thought, oh my goodness. I was thinking about it the other day, and I thought, I'm surprised we didn't break a few bones. But we did a lot of things like that, and we had to make our own play. And the boys, I had 3 brothers, and I thought I could do as much as they did. I guess I was kind of a tomboy, and so I learned how to play mumble peg with a knife, and I was as good as they were. And boxing, we had a pair of boxing gloves, and the boys wanted to box everybody that came over there just for fun. They weren't really boxers, but they did it for fun, and I put the gloves on a few times, and I didn't do too much with it, but it was, I was just telling them I could do what they could do. And the main thing that I remember that was a lot of fun, we had a lot of elm trees in the back of our yard, and elm trees were really popular up there where we lived. And my dad had to take out a few in our backyard. And we would climb up into the elm trees, and that was a lot of fun. And sometimes we would get June bugs, and would tie a string around the June bug and would fly the June bug. I don't know why that was so popular, but anyway. And going back to our backyard, my dad built a cellar, and a storm cellar. And on that block that we lived, no one had, well, there was one lady, an older lady, Mrs. Saunders. She had one. I don't think she went in it very often, but very few people had a storm cellar. But my dad built one, and I remember all the neighbors coming over using our storm cellar. And because we had a lot of tornadoes and bad weather, so we were in the cellar a lot. If we could get room, our neighbors took up a lot of space, but it had seats on each side. And he did a good job of building it. And then on top of the storm cellar, there was a platform, and we used that, a concrete platform, and we used that for barbecues and things like that. And I remember us as a child growing up, ice cream. See, we had a cow, one cow. Her name was Lady. And I remember me and my brothers, I was older, and then I had one younger brother, just 2 years younger than me. And then my little brother, he came on later. But I would have to take the cow out and stake her out. And I remember my dad telling me, now don't put that cow, don't put her in Johnson grass. Because if you put her in Johnson grass, it would make her milk blinky. So that was the main thing. I tried to put her in a good area where there was no Johnson grass. And we had to do that. And my older brother, he usually milked the cow in the afternoon. I'm not sure if he milked her once a day or twice. But anyway, he did the milking. And I have a picture of my two brothers giving the lady a bath, and they were scrubbing her and cleaning her. We kept everything real clean and orderly. And my dad believed in, and my mother too, keeping everything nice and clean and orderly. And that's why I learned very quickly to do that, to be an organized person and to have things looking clean and upright. Of course, you would know that now because I'm kind of disabled right now, and I can't get up and just run around and do things that I used to do. Okay, getting back to the houses, my first memory that when we moved from Lubbock to Sladen, we had an acreage, a big acreage, and that was a huge house. That house no longer exists, stands there. The high school band hall is where the house stood now at the present time. And I also took band. I started in the 5th grade with my instrument, and I played from the 5th grade on through high school. But that house was such it made an impression upon me. And then we went from that was on the east side of town. Then we moved on the west side. And my next memory was we had a house way down on the far end of the corner, the far end, and then there was a street next to it. It was on Dickens Street, and I remember the name. I remember the other number, but I don't remember the first. We lived on 2 houses on that street, but on the next recollection, we, again, I remember this. We had a big lake not too far from the back of our house. And I remember one time my mother was given a permanent. Back then you gave permanents to everybody. And we were supposed to have a church function. My mother always took us to church. And we had an early upbringing on spiritual things. And I remember we were supposed to go to the church that night for some kind of gathering. I don't remember what it was. But she had us all cleaned up and everything. Our hair was done and everything. So my older brother, he got the notion that we ought to go down and get a bunch of tadpoles. So we all agreed, my sister and I, all of us. We took a big barrel, not a barrel, but one of those, I guess it was a big barrel, one of those wash tub type barrels. So we took that down there. We brought a whole bucket of tadpoles back to the house, and we let them out. Oh, we thought that was so fun. We had tadpoles jumping all over the place, and we got dirty. I guess we were all dirty, but I just remember what happened to me. And my mother, after she got the permanent for the lady, and the lady, she went to church, and we went to the Methodist church at that time. And but after my mother saw what we did, and we were all dirty and messed up, and we had to get cleaned up again, I got the worst spanking of my life. And I don't know what happened to my other my brothers and my sister, but I remember I got the worst spanking. And I went to the church function, but I didn't have fun. I stood over there in a corner because I had whelps on my legs from the spanking. And of course now they would say that would be some kind of abuse, but I was so afraid of my mother spanking us. I wasn't afraid of my dad because he used a razor strap and it didn't hurt. And I got very few spankings from him because I guess I was his favorite since I was named after him. I was baptized in the First Methodist Church in Slayton, Texas. I remember that very clearly. At 8 years of age, I gave my heart and my soul to Jesus. It was an outdoor revival. I remember that very clearly. And I went down to the front and I told the preacher, we had a visiting preacher, I don't remember his name, but all I know is I told him about my giving my heart to Jesus and I wanted to be baptized. And I was baptized and confirmed at the church. And that was a very, very important date in my life. And the favorite part of the church to me was not only going to church, I always learned something, and or tried to learn something. My mother was very strict, and she had us sitting together, and she wanted us to learn about God and Jesus. And so my favorite part of the church hill was usually the little part that we would have. We had, after the services, we'd get together and have ice cream and cake or cookies. And I remember some very good friends of ours, the Barons, I wanted to put them in there. Ross and Ruby Barron. They had no children, and we went out to see them all the time. My mom and dad played 42 with them, and she always had cakes, and she was a good cook, and had cakes and cookies and sandwiches, and so we'd be outside running around the windmill and having fun outside. We'd come in and we'd eat sandwiches and cookies and everything, and they were so sweet, but they had no children. And then pertaining to vacation time, the one vacation we did take a vacation every year, but my dad had 12 brothers. There was 12 boys and one girl in the family. Can you imagine that? So in between all those uncles that I had, we had a big family, and we usually went to visit our uncles and aunts. So one vacation, I remember this. My dad had a truck, and he had put a tarp on the back, and him and Mom sat up front, and all of us kids sat in the back, and we had fun because we were back there and we didn't have any adults telling us what to do. And so my first recollection of this vacation was we went to Ritchey, New Mexico, and we swam in the Red River, and I have pictures of that. And we visited our aunt and uncle, Uncle Floyd and Aunt Martha, and then we went on to Ritchey, New Mexico, and saw some of that. And then we had another uncle that lived in Roswell, New Mexico, and we visited them at different times. But this one vacation, we took a lot of pictures, and I have pictures of the vacation, and we went on up to South Dakota. I had an uncle that lived in Bellevue, South Dakota, and he was a clown for the rodeos, and I have pictures of that also where we crossed over. It kind of looked like an oil well or something, where you kind of crossed over this walkway to get to the other side, and I had this real slouchy hat, and I had pants that were baggy. Anyway, I have a picture of that, and I really looked funny, but we were so far up there, and we saw them on that vacation, but we saw several uncles and aunts, and that one that was a clown, that was Uncle Homer. I graduated when I was 17, and I have a picture of my graduation picture with the gown on. One thing I remember, in my class was we went on a school trip, and it was 2 weeks before I got married, and I get my dad and I had to pay a little bit of money to. We all had to pay so much money to get to go to pay for the place that we stayed at. We stayed in Austin at some place, but I wanted to go because I knew that if I didn't go on that trip that I'd miss my fellow classmates and different ones, and I said, no, I've got to go. My dad, he didn't really want me to go. But I did go, and I'm so glad that I went because 2 weeks later I got married to my first husband, Bill Brown. Well, they called him Bill. But his name was William Buford Brown. He was named after his dad, Buford Brown. I finished high school early, and I married at 17. I had to get my dad to sign for me. And he was 6 years older than I was. I knew very little about his family other than his mother and dad. His mother and dad was Ruth and Buford Brown. Bill was, his birthday was July the 18th, 1932. And we married in May the 30th, 1956. And I had 4 children. They were fairly close together, but they're wonderful children. They're all good kids. At least I think they're good. And I've been a big part of their lives. First one is Lawana Sue Brown. Lawana was my oldest child, and of course she was spoiled a little bit, and she was breastfed and weaned at around 6.5 months. She was a very, very intelligent child. She knew her ABCs when she was just 13, 14 months old, because I sat and read her all the time these little books that had nursery rhymes and so forth, and the alphabet and different things. I read to all my children quite a bit, and they learn a lot by reading. And of course they weren't so glued on the television at that time. We did a lot of things together. Lawana accomplished a lot in her life, and she's still accomplishing it. But she only had a couple of jobs. The first job was with Southwestern Bell Telephone, and her father-in-law was with Bell and retired. Then her and Tommy went to the same school and they both were telephone operators. Well, it didn't last too long because she got a job with the insurance Kokosa Shepherd of Walton. He's worked over 40 years, I don't know just how many, but over 40 years with that insurance company. She's got married now. Her married name is Bullard. The second child was Donna K. Brown. Now, Donna has been married 4 times. She married twice to the same man. She's still married to her first and her last husband was Jim Carmody. She had 2 children from Tony, her second husband, and then her third husband. She had 2 children with him. Jim, Donna's first husband and last husband, her first and her fourth, they got together and they remarried. I was at their wedding. It was outdoors. It was a beautiful wedding. And they lived in Corpus for quite some time. Then they migrated to other places. And right now they're living in Dilley, not too far from here. They're working on a ranch with an oil well, and so they've got a RV, and they're staying at this RV and working together on that. Then my third child is sitting in there at the table. It's William Buford Brown III, and he's was in the Navy for almost 7 years. He was real proud of that, and he thought about retiring from the Navy, but he didn't. And he's a good young man. He's been taking care of me.
Okay, my Navy career started August 30th, 1979. That's when I went to boot camp. And boot camp was about 8 weeks, so I guess I was out of boot camp sometime early November. After that, I had volunteered to go to sea duty for 3 months to get some experience before I went to my first school. So I went to the USS Ranger aircraft carrier, stayed on there 3 months, got some experience, and then shipped out, went back to land to the training center and went to my 3-month A school, radioman school. And then after that, I was assigned to a brand new ship that wasn't even finished built. It hadn't even been built yet. It was the USS Callahan DDG 994. It was being built in Pascagoula, Mississippi by Litton Shipbuilding Company. So while we were waiting for the ship to be built, I got to go to a whole bunch of other schools. I volunteered for this school, that school, all related to radio. Some of it was antenna repair, teletype repair, a whole bunch of different schools, copy machine repair for our copier.
Okay.
I was on active duty for 6 years, then I was in the reserves for 6 years. After I got out, that's where you go once a month for 2 days, the weekend,
Okay.
and they pay you.
Yes, my fourth child, is Alan Scott Brown. And he was born in 1965 in Lubbock, Texas, Lubbock County. And Alan was more than, I guess, 5, 6 years old, maybe 7. But in that, he always loved the military. He wanted me to go in this our army surplus all the time to buy something. So that was my almost regular Saturday thing that we did together. So I always took him into the army surplus, and he bought all kinds of stuff. He'd buy canteens, he'd have a little uniform, and he wanted guns. He wanted everything just like the military. And then we lived near an open field that was plowed over, and he'd go out there and he'd throw clods of dirt at the enemy. There wasn't any enemy, but he was pretending there was a. But Alan has always been, he could fix almost anything. He could repair anything. He is a self-doer. And he was not taught by his dad. He taught himself. And he is always, and when he does something, he does a good job. He's a good person. He'll do anything in the world for you. He has always been an ingenious inventor. So all his life, he has learned to work with his own hands and to invent and to repair and to, do these various things. And he loved to work at the Red Lobster because he learned a lot. They were opening, he learned how to open the oysters and do a lot of that stuff that they had to do. And he has always been an outdoorsman. Outdoors, anything to do with the outdoors, he likes it. Hunting and fishing. So at one time I had to go with him to they had an archery range, and he insisted upon me going up there to watch him shoot the targets to see how good he was. And then he'd go swimming in the Guadalupe River, and he would target practice with his gun. He had his first gun was a BB gun. But then later he got a real gun, 22. And I gave him Terry's gun. Terry had a 22, and I gave him his gun also. My nursing career started when I was about, I believe I was 35. I was a little older. And I went, we lived down in the valley. We lived down in Harlingen. And so they had an excellent school of nursing down there. And a lot of people came there for their nursing career, because of the hospital right next to the nursing school. So I had always wanted to be a nurse ever since I was little. And I used to practice on my brothers and sisters. I had my little nursing box, and I'd put Band-Aids on them and take care of them, But I had always wanted to be a nurse. But since I was a little older, they like for you to come in when you were younger, 18 or in your 20s, but they don't like to take has-beens. And I didn't feel like I was a has-been, so I had to go talk to the director of nursing. And she was one of these old, stern nurses that her word went regardless. So I had to go in there and really out-talk her, and so to speak. And I told her how I wanted to be a nurse. And I told her, I said, if I can make it through school, I will be the best nurse that you have ever seen because that's my love. And I did. She accepted me into the program. And I was one of the older ones, but I wasn't the oldest. There was me and another lady. There was about 3 of us that were about the same age. And so I made it through nursing school with flying colors, and I passed my state board. And you have to go to state board. They give you 800 questions, and you have to get at least half those. Well, I did better than half, a lot better, and passed it and got my certificate in nursing. Well, I had to go to Austin to get past the state board, but I got the certification in nursing in Harlingen, Texas. I worked, my first job was at a nursing home. That was in, it was a little town just outside of Harlingen. I could have worked at the hospital in emergency, but it wasn't. I wanted to get a feel of things and the other, actually taking care of patients, that I wanted them to be better. So this nursing school, it was Twin Brook Nursing School, and I went there, and whoever had that, the director of nursing there, they had let those patients, those poor patients, just go. And they were just pitiful, some of them. Some of them had not been turned, and their arms were getting stiff. They were just in a desolate state. So I came in, and we had some aides that worked at first. I met with all the aides, and I told them, I said, I want these patients to be turned every 2 to 3 hours. I want to, give them massages, and if they're wet, I want them to be, I want you to clean them. We had a real good cleaning solution that we used all the time just for that purpose. And so they had to be clean and turned. And I said, they're going to get up in a chair. When we have a worship service, the preachers would come by and have a service on Sunday, usually Sunday afternoon, because by that time everybody was through cleaning their patients, giving them baths, so forth. So I said, and we have festivities there, they're going to be up going to those festivities. See, none of that was done, so I kind of turned that place upside down. And it was a lot of hard work. And one of the doctors that come by, they used to come by about once a month or so. And so I had to make rounds with the doctor for each patient. And he said, well, I can really see somebody has been working very hard on this place. But I felt so sorry for the patients when I got there, because I was real hard on the nurse aides, and I told them, I said, if I come in there and see that something is not done, y'all are expected to do your best working here and not let these patients go. Anyway, I impressed upon them the need for them to be clean and go to festivities and do all the things you're supposed to do in taking care of patients. And that's just the way I was. I meant every word. And then when I got home, not only was I felt like I couldn't hardly rest or anything. I was on call. If anything happened, then I had to be called back to the nursing home for any accidents or anything. So that was my first job. I forgot to tell you that I had a stroke, and it was in 2012. It was December the 22nd in 2012. And I'm still kind of recuperating from it. I had to learn how to walk when I was at the place where I went. I could not walk. I had to learn how to walk all over again. And I was using different apparatuses that you hold on to and walk. And of course, I can raise my arm and move it and everything, but I can't hold anything in my hand. It just won't work. And it's been 6 years, so you could see what a stroke does to you. I had gone into the doctor to get my right carotid artery cleaned out. It was not supposed to be a big deal. At least everybody told me that it was not a big deal. Well, I got into the doctor, and when I was in there, I had a stroke when I was in the, I don't know exactly when it happened, if it was during the procedure or after, but all I know is waking up in the recovery room. I could not talk, I could not do anything. And so they moved me to my room, and 2 doctors came in and sat on the edge of the bed. They told me that I'd had a stroke. And you know, that's so unfortunate when you go in to have your artery cleaned out and then you come out worse than when you went in. So anyway, I'm still recovering from that with my right arm. So you can see it takes a long time to recover from the stroke. I was reminded that I had to learn everything with my left hand. I have to do everything with my left hand. I can write out my checks, I can write letters, I can write most anything. It takes me a little while, but I had to learn how to write with my left hand.
And she paints. She can paint and she can draw, and she does artwork.
Yes, I'm on my 12th book of artwork. I have drawn horses and birds and all kinds of animals. I draw them, and then I use either crayon map colors, and most people think my artwork is pretty good.
It's
My
beautiful.
my friend Ann King, she
Yes,
liked
it's
my
beautiful.
artwork, and like I said, I've gone through 12 books. I'm almost on my 13th book. So that has kept me, it's kept my mind busy, and it's kept me busy, but mostly my mind, so that I will have something to look forward to. And I'm still doing it, love it, I love it. I love artwork. I will talk about my second husband, Terry Samuel Ritchey. Now, there was a lot of Samuels in that family. But first of all, his birthday was December the 13th, 1925. Okay, well, Terry, my husband, he was born in Somerset, Texas. Now, all of his sisters and brothers was born in Lytle. All of them were born in Lytle. Now, his dad, his first marriage, I'm not sure, he had 2 girls from his first marriage. And his wife, well, she died. She contracted measles, and she died. That's all the rest of his. Terry's brothers and sisters were born. I guess I have buried on my mind. but they were born in Lytle.
Okay.
Okay, this is pertaining to the Ritchey family, Terry's ancestor. Okay, I can go back 3 generations. The first generation that I have known of is Adam Ritchey. They came over here on a ship. I don't think I have the name of the ship, but I got some of this information from a lady up in Rhode Island, and I know it's accurate what I have. But anyway, his name was Adam, and he had the first child on his way. They had on their way to America. They came from Scotland or England. They came over here to the United States. And then the second Ritchey was the one that was born on the boat, I mean the ship. And he was robbed and killed. I tell you, it's so unfortunate. He had just inherited his dad's inheritance, and it was quite a big money, a big sum of money. And so some guy had been following him around, and he was killed with an axe, and the guy that killed him and took his money, and they never found who did it. And then the third generation was Terry's father, Laddie Samuel Ritchey. But that's as far back as the first, second, third generation, and then it goes on down. His family, his dad was named Laddie Samuel Ritchey, and then his mom was called, her name was Lula, L-U-L-A, Lula. And they are buried over there at the Bear Cemetery, and Terry's buried over there too. Out of his dad's family, his grandmother had to take care of not only her children, but she had part of the children from the other lady. So there was a lot of children, and I think the reason that she left Mr. Ritchey was because she had to take care of all his kids. Now I don't know the reason, I really don't, but she married a Mr. Hawk first, and then she married another one. She was married 4 times. And the last man she was married to was Mr. Walters. And I do know this about the people that were born and raised in that time period. The women didn't have much of an education, and they had to marry a man to take care of them and their children. And that's why they got married so quickly after their husband had passed away. January the 12th, 2014. It hadn't been that long ago, but my first and my second husband died pretty close together. They have a plot over there that they're all together, all the Ritcheys are together. Now, out of that family, let's see, they had 7 children. Terry was the youngest out of the family. There was another little boy that was born, but he died 3 days later. But anyway, they all the Ritcheys are buried over there. And I will tell you the names of them. Terry's brother, he had a brother called Murray Ritchey. And then there was Virgie Ritchey, and then there was Stella. Stella, she went to California and married someone out there, and the marriage didn't last very long. But they had one child during their marriage, and she ended up coming here to Somerset practically on her deathbed, and her sister took care of her. And then there was Lena Ritchey, and she lived, well, she married somebody that worked in the oil fields, and they had to move different places because, you know, how the oil fields, they move you around a lot. Pete Ritchey, P-E-T-E. They lived right across the street from us. The top left is Pete Ritchey. Next to him is Virgie. Next to her is Myrtle. And then Terry. And then down below, far left, is Lena. And then Mary Ritchey. She came from the first marriage. And then Murray Ritchey.
Virgie.
That's Virgie and Dick Johnson. That rose right there is a hybrid rose. It is the most beautiful, full rose that you'll ever see. And that is about a week old. My son brought it in. He always brings me a rose almost every day. And it makes me feel better. But it's a hybrid. And at one time, I had a pink rose bush, yellow. I had the yellow rose of Texas. I had a lavender rose bush and red roses and orange roses. Some of them haven't made it, but my pink and my fuchsia are still out there. And my lavender bush. That's real good. Right there was taken. The Methodist Church took that picture. And that was the last picture that me and Terry made of each other.